Incompetence and wrestling with anxieties when looking at my neighbor. It's always comparatively better.
And then you go on to say, to make now. So this is where I got confused.
Okay.
I like reading after.
Okay.
Because you're saying the next Nelson, she's not confused, just like trying to tie it back to the whole community representation.
Yes.
You say the next Nelson Mandela will be killed by the next Nelson Mandela killed by their father, and then the next Mother Teresa choked by their mother. Like, okay. So
those specific lines place emphasis on the fact that we need to, let me make an example with South Africa. Regardless of what country you come from, right? Regardless of whether you're in America, you're in Tanzania, you're in Kenya, whatever. But I'm just using South Africa as an example. And obviously within South Africa, there are different societies as well. There are sub-societies, right? And there are different units as well. So that line was basically to emphasize the fact that you as an individual, your potential is not just dependent on you.
On me.
How you're raised, and actually comes back to the very first half of the piece where I was talking about how the way my mother raised me affected me. It affected the way that I do things. I don't know if you've noticed this. There's this guy Darren Hardy who wrote a book, The Compound Effect, where he talks about the power of developing good habits and the power of doing good habits over a long period of time with discipline, right? So he mentions the fact that his father used to get up every morning like clockwork and exercise every single morning. Now, the interesting thing I found in him is that once I heard it from him, I started spotting it in a lot of other people that I look up to. Speakers, writers, teachers, pastors. You notice that a lot of them who find discipline to be like, well, of course you gotta be disciplined. It's because of how they were raised. I was recently watching Kevin Hart's documentary on Netflix where he actually gets to a place. Kevin Hart is a very disciplined person. His work ethic is incredible. He's commended for it. But then a conversation that even in that documentary series, it's not spoken of enough, is the fact that he was raised by a mother, because his mother saw that his brother was busy. His brother ended up in prison. So he was busy doing thugging around, basically living the thug life, and his mother didn't want him to end up like that. So she kept his schedule busy. So he had piano, he had swimming lessons, he had extra classes. She did that to him intentionally to keep him away from that lifestyle. So she gave him a gift that he grew up with unintentionally. So he ended up just having that work ethic within him that doesn't happen accidentally.
That's how he was raised.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
So that's what it basically refers to, the fact that I'm not trying to say that it is solely dependent on how you were raised. Vusi Tembegwayo, one of the most prominent and successful business speakers and entrepreneurs in this country, and I dare say on this continent, right? And he's one of the most influential as well. He constantly goes back to the fact that my father, his father trained him, taught him discipline, took him to the dojo. That is not, come on, like how many stories do we need to hear
for us to know that,
but you know what,
you need to be present.
It's not just dependent on me as an individual. So this was very powerful for me to understand, because once I understood this, because my father wasn't there to teach me those disciplines. He was in my life, but he wasn't there to show me, get up in the morning and brush your teeth and, maybe pray, say a prayer and go and take a jog and come back and read a book. And he wasn't there to teach me those disciplines, you understand? And as a result, I grew up lacking a lot of those things. So personal discipline is something I find very difficult to do to this day. But at some point, I needed to cut myself some slack and say, you know what, Given, remember where you come from. Don't compare yourself with someone who comes from a house where they could afford a tutor,
You should not just take your life and be like the ones who paste it.
Exactly. Give yourself time to grow and adjust and etc.
Okay, cool. One thing I like about Poetic pieces now.
You're making me realize that there's so much in my work. I didn't realize there was this much content. I really didn't.
It's a lot. Yeah, as I was saying, one thing I love about Poetic pieces is now how they, how writers have, but I know sometimes we just write pieces and just leave them there without actually concluding anything. You just want to release. But this one, I think you came to now a connection of all of them. When you say now, though through past shapes and future faults, I'm sure it's future faults or what, and you say Jesus holds the power to extinguish the flames of disaster.
Yes.
So now we have, I think, essentially going back to you, a father figure, going back to the communities. I don't know. How are we looking at Jesus now? What kind of power are we looking at Jesus now?
Yeah, so that was also a reminder to remember. I think a lot of my poems, to be quite honest, I write them to me.
Yeah.
Right? So that was also a reminder to myself that when regardless, and also a reminder to the audience, whoever's going to be listening to it, that, you know what, regardless of how bad your past has been, because I think the line is just regardless of your past, where you grew up, the context, who raised you, and even though, because it's very difficult, even when you're older and you have money, to actually find a mentor to care enough about you, because once your family has not cared enough about you, and you're thinking you're going to go into the world and find someone to care about you just enough, it's important to remember that in spite of all the mess, and in spite of how society is self-absorbed and they're more interested in themselves than they are in you, unless you're willing to pay them for the attention, it's important to remember that Christ is there. Like, Christ is there to help you. I can totally tell you. I remember I was doing a radio interview once, I think it was with Kwane FM, and after the interview, the interviewer asked me the question off record, like, so since, because she knows me, right? She knows me off air. So she was asking me the question, because I was talking to her on air and telling her how, the kind of background I come from. So she was like, so since you come from such a background and you don't have a father figure within your life, how were you able to become the person that you are today? So I mentioned to her that, actually I didn't mention it to her properly, articulated properly at the time, but thinking about it later, I was like, to be quite honest, it was by God's grace. It was by God's grace. I'm honestly telling you, like, there's a lot of things that even now when I hang out with some guys and even girls themselves, and we have certain conversations, they are in awe. And for me, it's like, and I don't say this to boast at all, they are in awe of the certain characteristics and the way that I speak and the conversations that I'm interested in. And it's quite honestly because I truly believe it's because of the people that God brought into my life, because of the material and content as well. In terms of the sermons I listen to, in terms of the books I've read. I'm not a bookworm, but I do enjoy reading. I prefer listening to audiobooks while washing dishes or cleaning the flat or something.
No, I get you, bro. I'm glad you have like hope to fall back on. And then you end the piece by saying seeds don't choose where they are planted, nor choose their ever afters. So now are you saying now we should not like stick, I think you mentioned it when you were talking about poverty, we should not stick to what our past was and like want to stay there. So how are we looking to the future now, like, no matter where you were planted?
So that, I think those lines that you're on right now are very important to the entire piece. Very important, because those are actually, that's where the conclusion is. The fact that though, because I think it starts off, though the past can shape the future, it's first of all going into the fact that Jesus is able to extinguish those flames of disaster, referring to your past experiences. And then also moving into that line as well, that seeds don't choose where they're planted. Seeds can be planted in a desert, seeds can be planted in a household with violence, seeds can be planted in the most beautiful home, in the suburb. You know, seeds don't choose where they're planted. But the thing is, even and also they don't choose where they go from after they've been planted. But now the difference between you and a seed is the fact that you may not choose where you're planted, and I literally meant where you're conceived, or by who your parents become. And you don't choose the situation where you grow up. But you may not choose that, but you definitely do have a say and a choice in terms of when it comes to your happily ever after. That doesn't mean that you can become anything you want to be. And I say that because someone might, I'm saying this because someone might interpret it this way. So he's trying to say that I've been through all of this mess. Therefore, I can choose where I end up, and I can end up anywhere I want to be. It's unfortunate. Yes, you can end up wherever you're willing to be in terms of if you're putting in the effort, if you're putting in the time, if you're putting in the hard work, you can end up wherever you want to be, right? But it's also, I think, to be fair to yourself, it's important to recognize that, for example, there are some sacrifices that are not worth it, right? Even though you might be an astronaut, you want to be an astronaut or an entrepreneur, family might matter more to you than being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, or than being a billionaire. It might matter more to you raising your son than being a multi-billionaire. So it's also important to be fair with yourself that, you know what, even though now I know I've been equipped with the knowledge that even though I come from this household, I can still choose to become, you know, because I think I'm a testament of that, you know, because we don't have the time for me to get into my entire life story, but I truly do believe that I'm a testament of that. The fact that I come from a household that if you go back home and just look at the mentality where I come from, even the town in itself, like, going back there is depressing, you know, and honestly, I don't mean to just speak badly about where I come from, but it is part of my story, right? It is part of my narrative and my origin story as well. So I'm looking at where I am right now, but it is testament for me, you know, and I'm slowly hoping that it's building that mentality within my siblings. One of the most beautiful, sorry, I'm being a bit long-winded.
No, please say this.
One of the most beautiful compliments I've ever had in my entire life was from my cousin from back home, who told this to my sister, not to me directly. She went behind my back, so to speak, and said this to my eldest sister that, you know, Given really inspires me. That hit home. That really hit home for me. I come from a bit of a worse situation where my mother's a single mother raising more kids than her mother, and etc. So there's a lot to my mother, by the way. So there's a lot to her, which it's not what in all this that I've mentioned. I'm not trying to say she's a bad person. She's a very good person. One of my mother's, the thing that she holds on her shoulders, I don't care what you can say to her. You can come and say whatever you want to say. My mother will always tell you, when I get to God, I'll at least be able to say I looked after my kids and I gave it my all.
That's beautiful.
Those are my mother's words.
That's one thing she has is being a mom. Then that's beautiful.
Exactly.
Wow, bro, that was truly a beautiful piece. I'm not saying this to get you up, but that was truly
awesome. Thank you so much.
Piece. And like you said, you poured so much of yourself into it. So I have to ask, you wrote the piece, so do you feel like now you are dealing with some of the wounds that you mentioned? Do you feel like the piece was a good outlet for you to, you know, to start healing, or even if you were to continue the journey of healing and to continue the journey of now looking towards your own future?
Definitely. The poem was a very, it was just an experience of definitely releasing and also reflection as well. Like sort of like just doing some inventory, just to check, you know, what's working, what's not working, kind of thing. I do that a lot with my poems. At every stage of my life, I sort of express where I'm at, how I feel. Do I feel something's broken? And the poem itself helps me discover myself. So at times I even refer back to my own work. just to sort of remind myself, Guti, remember this is where you come from. So there's a lot that I'm working on. There's a lot, and over the years, there's a lot that there's Andrew Womack, a minister that I really love. He usually says this line very often. He says, "I have not arrived, but I have left." Certainly left. So that's how it feels for me as well, because the journey of like mentioning in the poem that I'm still broken inside and I'm trying to collect the pieces, yet society stands still expecting colossus. There are still broken parts, right, that I'm still trying to collect, but it's a journey. It's definitely a journey.
Thanks, bro. Thank you so much for sharing your heart, man. And when people want to see all these other great works that you've mentioned, how do people connect with you on the socials? Because you did mention we're in the millennial age.
Yes. So it's very easy. For me, everywhere it's Given Illustrative. Everywhere. On Facebook, it's Given Illustrative Masilela, but all of my handles are Given Illustrative. Twitter won't let me do that because it has to be a certain length. So it's still at Illustrative GM. But even if you get onto Twitter and search for Given Illustrative, I should pop up. And if you can't, on YouTube as well, it's Given Illustrative Masilela. On Facebook, Given Illustrative Masilela. On everywhere, Given Illustrative Masilela, or just Given Illustrative.
Thank you so much, bro.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys. Wow, that was a beautiful one. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like the page, subscribe, go back to the other episodes, leave a comment and tell me who you want to see on the next episodes. And as always, love people and thoroughly love Wade.
I've been buried in dirt, heaps of my insecurities, the feeling of incompetence and wrestling with anxieties when looking at my neighbor. It's always comparatively better is the life of a man who so happens to not be me, but my vision has been obscured and I'm only able to see the part of a man's life that he chose to expose to me. But his deepest pain, he has hidden successfully, his failure as a father, addiction to pornography. He's climbed up the corporate ladder, yet his life remains